Hello, hello, hello. So today we are talking about 90s America's sweetheart, Julia Roberts. Now, the reason why I say the 90s is because her career has since ventured into other paths, okay? She picks different roles, not just the rom-coms that she is primarily loved for. So, everyone knows Miss Julia Roberts as the pretty woman with the $1 million smile. But she is also known for her messy love life. Now, the media and the public alike love to hold her to a different standard. However, you may be surprised to know just how messy her personal life has been. Julia's breakout role came in 1988 with the movie Mystic Pizza. She played Daisy, one of three young women who worked at their mentor's pizzeria during an important chapter of their lives when they are faced with some life-changing decisions. Hello, my name is Tamika, and whether you stumbled upon Junkie for a Story or are here by intention, thank you for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if so, please give it a like and subscribe by the end. And don't forget to hit the bell for notifications so you won't miss out whenever I release new videos. Also, if you are interested in the books that I will be referring to in this video, I will provide links in the description box for the two books that I will be referencing. One is titled Julia, Her Life by James Spada. And the second one is Julia, America's Sweetheart, the National Enquirer Files. And yes, if I can find links, I will put them in the description box for you to get more information on those books. And now, back to the video. Julia had a man-stealing reputation that dates back to her high school years. Her classmates and friends remembered her as boy crazy and phony. One girl said Julia befriended her only to steal her boyfriend at a Saturday night party they went to. Another classmate, Kelly Rice, claimed Julia Roberts changed boyfriends as often as she changed underwear. And so it's no wonder that she became tabloid gold once she became a superstar. So first, let's start with her romance with co-star Liam Neeson, who was almost twice her age and mature in other ways as well. They met on the set of the TV movie Satisfaction, which also starred Justine Bateman. Now, Bateman was currently starring in this popular sitcom Family Ties, but she was looking to break out into the movies like her co-star Michael J. Fox did. And so she was really ambitious with this role. And also, the role took on a transference-like experience for Bateman because she became a little bit possessive of Liam in a way that made sense with her character, but she kind of took that into real life as well, some might say. But nonetheless, Liam was not interested in Justine. Instead, he took a liking to Julia Roberts. And the feelings were mutual. They began dating and lived with each other for 2 years. Liam's friends said she seemed to spark him off, and they would be crawling all over each other. With most of her relationships, Julia that is, there always was a strong sexual attraction. She was a young woman, and so a relationship with more depth may have taken a few more years to form. However, Neeson, being old enough to be her father, should have noticed the shallowness of this romance and not gotten involved, because he would later be hurt by the boy crazy upcoming celebrity who didn't quite know how to end a relationship with dignity and integrity. Neeson emphasized to the press that it was a serious relationship, almost to the point that I guess he could hear people questioning the strength of this relationship. And Julia herself proclaimed that they were becoming unsimple together. This would be a theme throughout her life, to prove to people how simple she is and how simple her romantic life is as well. One day, Julia got severely sick, and this illness would test their relationship. Liam became concerned, and he and Julia's mother agreed that because the illness persisted, they told Julia she should go to the emergency room, which she did. And the doctor gave her a 50-50 chance of survival. They don't go into details about what type of sickness, what the illness was, but she was extremely frail and exhausted. And the press was speculating she had a drug problem, but there is no evidence of that. However, the experience brought Liam and Julia closer together, but it wasn't enough to keep the boy crazy Julia from acting on her sexual desires for actor Dylan McDermott. She met him on the set of Steel Magnolias. It was only his second feature film. At least Julia was more tactful by breaking up with Liam over the phone and not having her agent or someone else do it in this event. Still, Liam was heartbroken and stunned by this. He wasn't expecting it at all. You know, they were living together and he thought they were very much in love. The very private and kind-hearted Liam was destroyed by this news. And Julia went forward with her relationship with Dylan McDermott. At this time, she was filming Pretty Woman, which was then titled 3000. You'll notice that Julia tends to fall for her co-stars. So even though she was in a relationship with Dylan McDermott, she succumbed to her passion for Richard Gere, though he was using that to get a good performance out of her. Gere wanted no amorous ending with Julia Roberts, but the naive actress wasn't yet schooled on the acting 101 with mature-aged leading men. So she was probably thinking something was happening between her and Richard Gere. Gere knew all along he was only keeping his leading lady happy to get the right performance for box office gold. But then word got back to Dylan McDermott. So Julia and McDermott had an agreement, because I'm sure they were aware of the cliche of co-stars falling in love and having, or at least trying to continue a romance after the film wrapped. So to ensure that their relationship was a success, they agreed to visit each other on sets whenever they were apart. McDermott was filming Hardware in Morocco, and Julia Roberts she was in California filming Pretty Woman. And Dylan, he came to visit her, but Julia never came to see him in Morocco. Now, who knows whether it was scheduling conflicts or what, but she never came out there to see McDermott. And then the tabloids were talking about Julia Roberts and Richard Gere as if they were an item. Keep in mind, Julia and McDermott were engaged at this point. They got engaged right after filming wrapped on Steel Magnolia. So when the rumors made their way back to Morocco, Dylan McDermott decided to pay his fiancée a visit on the set of Pretty Woman. And it sounds like he did not like what he saw. So, well, first, I should say, they had a phone call before he came to visit. And he confronted her with his suspicions about her having an affair with Richard Gere. She, of course, denied it, but he wasn't believing what she was saying. So then he returned to the States to see for himself. His spying on Julia did not make him happy. So again, he confronted Julia with what he thought he knew. And of course, Julia continued to deny a romance with Richard Gere. But their behavior, Julia and Richard Gere, spoke for itself. It was obvious they had chemistry. Maybe Gere, with his mature age and just good-looking man ways, he's just used to being able to control his feelings more so than the promiscuous Julia Roberts. So, but also Julia Roberts was also in her 20s. I mean, she was a young woman in Hollywood, not quite used to the attention she was getting. And I would say Richard Gere was out of her league, but just getting even the slightest bit of attention from the leading man probably was too much for her. Nonetheless, Julia and McDermott got into a heated fight, and she said, "You don't own me, asshole." And that's when it was a wrap for Dylan and Julia. The engagement was off. Dylan was heartbroken and said to have lost 12 pounds in the ensuing months. After the breakup with McDermott, Julia actually tried to win her ex-boyfriend Liam Neeson back. But again, Liam is a little more level-headed than Julia, and her grand gestures, much like her rom-coms, she had the phone calls, she was writing him letters. She chased him unabashedly, but he was ruined by that phone call when she broke up with him. So he just was unwilling to go back to the flaky Julia Roberts, who changed her mind as often as she did outfits. Up next is her relationship with Kiefer Sutherland. Now, he was known to have a problem with alcohol and other addictions. So this one should be fun. Okay, so they met in October 1989 while filming Flatliners. This movie is about a group of 5 medical students, 4 of whom flirt with death by stopping their hearts for a few minutes to experience what it means to die. The first scene she shot for the film was with Kiefer, when she tried to save his character from flatlining himself to death. Talk about fiction imitating life. Because his drug addiction could be construed as a less, well, no, I can't say that, but a subconscious way of flatlining himself to death at a slower pace. Anyway, Kiefer was married to Puerto Rican actress Camelia Cath at the time. She was 14 years his senior, and though they were already on the brink of divorce, his meeting Julia certainly didn't help matters. So the couple separated shortly after. Julia says of meeting Kiefer, "I fell for Kiefer the minute I laid eyes on him." They moved in together in the spring of 1990, and Julia claimed they enjoyed a quiet life. They both were known to have fun and be flirty. Kiefer especially was known as a party animal, but her new boo had such a profound effect on her that she didn't notice how well Pretty Woman was performing at the box office. They got engaged and were visibly smitten with each other. But Julia was not only breaking up marriages, she was ruining her own upcoming nuptials. There were multiple reports of her getting too frisky in bars and the time she was seen getting close to JFK Jr., who was engaged to actress Daryl Hannah. Although Roberts was in her early 20s and portraying a naive to Hollywood persona at this time, she knew how to, with calculation, fool the press when she wanted to. And so far, the press and the public were buying what she was selling. Until Sutherland was caught two-timing Pretty Woman with pictures to prove it. A Barbara Walters interview and an Academy Award date later, she had her publicist announce their wedding date for June 14th in a small and private ceremony. But at some point, things changed, and it turned into a paparazzi dream show. So the date was June 14th, set for the massive soundstage at the 20th Century Fox lot. Julia's gown was a custom two-piece with a long jacket. Her four bridesmaids, including actress Deborah Porter and her talent agent Elaine Goldsmith, had already picked up their Manolo Blahnik shoes. The groom's cake for his bachelor party had already been made. So you can only imagine the pressure Roberts must have felt to go forward with the wedding, because to cancel, she might come across as selfish and inconsiderate, given the money and time that was spent. But then there was a 24-year-old stripper named Amanda Rice, also known as Raven. It was sometime in January 1991. They got close, and according to Rice, Sutherland complained about the hell he had been in dating Julia Roberts. He also professed that they were not getting married, even though it was well documented in the press that they were engaged. Amanda Rice gave an interview to the London newspaper The Sun on May 7th, where she disclosed intimate details about Kiefer and Julia's storybook romance, like how self-centered the movie star was and how sex with her was like being with a corpse. And then there was a romantic collision between Sutherland Roberts and actor Jason Patric. Julia had previously met Patrick, but on June 9th, they got reacquainted and apparently too close for comfort. Jason Patric is the son of actor Jason Miller from Exorcist and the grandson of legendary comedian Jackie Gleason. So after word got back to Kiefer about the two of them appearing romantic, he disinvited The Lost Boys co-star from his wedding. Julia speaks about the phone call that ended her engagement to Kiefer Sutherland. And it almost sounds like he was trying to one up her. Or maybe, he knew the breakup was coming, so he called to break up with her first, just to, I guess have the upper hand. I don't know. Julia went on a girls' trip to Canyon Ranch Health Resort in Tucson, Arizona, with her two sisters, a friend, and actress Ali Sheedy. It was on that trip that she found her eyes stamped on Jason Patric. And like I said, she had time to think about the wedding to Kiefer Sutherland, and she concluded that she would be better off breaking the engagement. It was as if Kiefer knew what was coming. So he tried to orchestrate the breakup before America's Sweetheart could break up with him first. Then on June 7th, just days after calling off the wedding, Julia Roberts got on a plane to Dublin with Jason Patric. They stayed in a hotel together but booked separate rooms. Now, I don't know if that was for show or if they actually did stay in separate rooms, but that's what they say. However, their bliss was short-lived. Patrick, being a private person, did not adapt to the paparazzi and media coverage that came with dating the pretty woman. It was while dating Roberts that Patrick found himself on the cover of People magazine. Paparazzi would stalk them outside of his home, which was a one-bedroom duplex apartment, even though he was being paid $500,000 per film at this point. So he could afford a better residence than the one he invited Julia to stay in with him. It was almost like he took a hard stance when it came to his affluence. He went out of his way to look like a poor college kid. It was endearing, but also condescending. Anyway, Julia Roberts moved in with him, and she took no issue with his taste in furniture, which was, maybe you can call it Goodwill chic. Although she did park her Porsche in their low-income neighborhood and eventually put it in storage when she found some guys trying to steal it one day. But like all of her romances, this one came to an end. So rumors started to spread when Julia Roberts would be seen out without Jason Patric. And with the paparazzi stalking them everywhere they went, his absence could be explained by him just not wanting to deal with the paparazzi. Or it could also be, her romances have a short life expectancy. Whatever the reason, once again, Julia Roberts found herself being accused of having a romance with one of her co-stars, Daniel Day-Lewis. Now, this was Jason Patric making the accusation. Whether the allegation had any truth to it or not, Julia Roberts and Jason Patric had an explosive fight on January 18th, 1993. At the center of this fight was the possible affair with Daniel Day-Lewis. Now, people say Daniel Day-Lewis was serious about his acting career and not looking to get tied down by romance. He also was good at keeping his personal life private. Now, it hasn't been confirmed or not whether at that time Julia Roberts had an affair with Daniel Day-Lewis, but it is speculated that she did, and that was enough to break up her relationship with Jason Patric. When asked about his failed romance with Julia Roberts, the usually tight-lipped Jason Patric told Entertainment Weekly that it was a nightmare, blaming the excessive paparazzi interest and Julia herself for using her personal life to advance her fame. He even said, I'm quoting, it gets down to the point of character, end quote. Now, I find that odd considering when he got with Julia Roberts, she was already a tabloid darling. So if we're talking about character, we can question his as well for choosing to get into a relationship with her, especially when she was dating Kiefer Sutherland. So again, when we're talking about character, he chose to involve himself with someone who was engaged to another man. And then there was the weird union of Julia Roberts and Lyle Lovett. This is one of those romances that doesn't quite fit with the rest. Obviously, there is Lovett's looks, but also he's quirky and from Texas, not an actor, which is her typical partner. But they worked and worked hard to convince others that they were in love. And again, Julia Roberts, she seemed naive to Hollywood, but she knew how to use the press, the media, everyone to her advantage. So she was giving interviews all the while planning her marriage, her wedding to Lyle Lovett. They got married in a small and private ceremony in Marion, Indiana. But the press nor the public was exactly buying this happy union. First, there was the living arrangement. Lyle Lovett was known to love his Texas farmhouse, which his grandfather built in the 1920s. But Julia Roberts, she owned a 4-bedroom duplex penthouse in Gramercy Park. But she also rented a home in Los Angeles, which they both would stay at when they were in town. Still, Texas, New York, I don't know. So Julia tried to convince everyone that the two had more in common than may be apparent to an observer. Lovett was known as a good old boy who would ride around town in his pickup truck and tend to his chickens, whereas Roberts was more of a city girl who had commitment issues. Julia would be seen at his concerts singing the country hit Stand By Your Man and playing the adoring wife. And Lovett would often gush about his life with Julia Roberts. Then, like with her previous relationships, reports told a different story. Lyle Lovett would not stay at her place, but instead a hotel when he was in town, and she was not attending his concerts after a while. Rumors got so loud that Julia had to respond to them by saying, Lyle knows the truth. Essentially, our marriage is a storybook romance. Even though she had been caught out one evening with actor Ethan Hawke. Lovett said of their marriage, it's a common misconception that musicians get a lot. My concern is not for the musician who, doesn't get any, because it's one thing to not get any, but to not get any and have people think you are. Well, that's tragic. It makes you kind of feel for him, don't you? But again, Lyle Lovett and Julia Roberts continued with the charade. and attended an award show together. Then Lovett performed at the Austin's Paramount Theater. And that's where the storybook romance turns into a late night Lifetime movie. Lau was caught having an affair with an aspiring country singer named Kelly Willis. The 26-year-old woman was alleged to have been carrying on an affair with Lovett for several months. And Julia Roberts and Lau Lovett separated after that news was, well, after it became public. But even after the breakup, they still remained friends. Julia said, I have what I call the Lau barometer. And then there was Benjamin Bratt. This one was the prize, or was he? He's definitely a beauty on the outside and was one of Hollywood's most eligible bachelors. He also seemed more like a nice guy compared to Kiefer Sutherland. So Julia met Benjamin Bratt at a restaurant in New York City when Julia was dining with some friends. The audacious Roberts made the first move by having a waiter tell Bratt that she wanted to buy him a drink. Benjamin, thinking it was one of his friends playing a joke, ignored the request. The next day, he second-guessed himself and wrote her an apologetic letter. It took several months to make its way to her since she had already flown back to the West Coast the next day. They set a dinner date, and the rest is tabloid history. When asked why the paparazzi were more respectful of Julia and Benjamin Bratt's relationship, and even the public, she said, I think he's just a badass and everyone's scared. However, they weren't as respectful and impatient when it came to the 30-something Roberts, who was unmarried and hadn't had a single child yet. They immediately went into the American Dream narrative once she was linked up with her new boo. Though Julia Roberts and Benjamin Bratt use wonderful prose to describe their romance, the media began pressuring them in unsubtle ways to set a date, as in a wedding date. But the usual issues surfaced in the relationship. Bratt also didn't like the paparazzi attention when out with Julia Roberts. He was a private man who not much was known about him until he started dating the Notting Hill actress. After 3 years of dating and no engagement in sight, many speculated on what was holding up their happily ever after. And then one day, on June 28, 2001, they were no longer. A year later, Bratt got his happily ever after with actress Talisa Soto. Well, he was crying to the press some of the same complaints her exes had about dating Julia Roberts. Now, some speculate that the breakup was because of George Clooney, who she was spending a lot of time with in his trailer while filming Ocean's 11. But the breakup did seem sudden, and the pretty woman, I can't tell if she was shocked by it, but she sure did seem okay. However, she remained classy when she confirmed it on the David Letterman show when she said, Benjamin Bratt is a good man, but he is not my man. And if you look at her track record thus far, even though the relationship didn't result in marriage and kids, she should be proud of herself for what she attracted when it came to Benjamin Bratt, because some of her other exes are less than stellar. And finally, there is Daniel Motor. So Daniel Motor was a cameraman that Julia Roberts met. The first time she met him was on the set of The Mexican. But Brad Pitt interrupted whatever ideas she was getting about getting close to Motor, because we know her track record. She knows how to break up a marriage, okay? Or a relationship. Hers, yours, anybody's. So it sounds like nothing happened there. But then things pick back up again after the breakup with Benjamin Bratt. Now, Daniel Motor was married to makeup artist Vera Steinberg. But when he realized that Julia Roberts was interested in him, he convinced her that his marriage was over. So Julia, wanting what she wants, took his word for it and continued to pursue a romance with the cameraman. Her affair with Motor became public in September 2001. The tearful Vera used the tabloids to her advantage, keeping the story going about Julia stealing her husband. Julia, on the other hand, was oblivious to how this affair with a married man was ruining her America's sweetheart persona. But that didn't stop her, of course. Julia would get Motor hired on projects, so they were always together. Or maybe because she worried karma would cost her this irresistible hunk. He eventually filed for divorce in October, but Vera wasn't going to make it easy for her husband, who showed no respect to their vows. The tabloids began calling Julia the Elizabeth Taylor of her time. Now, the Motor marriage only lasted 4 years and they didn't have children together. Still, his family sided with Vera because Julia's behavior was audacious and inconsiderate, among other things. However, a visit to Danny Motor's father's home, his lake house to be specific, proved fruitful. Danny's father forged an alliance with his son, Danny Motor, and his son's new girlfriend, Julia Roberts. Although Vera was still fighting to keep her marriage and threatening to contest the divorce. Vera accused Roberts of using her, these are my words, but I'm going to call it her pimpstress juice, to lure Danny in and throwing in camera work for him as a bonus. Vera made them jump through hoops before she would grant him a divorce and make Julia Roberts a respectable woman. And anxious Julia was wanting this Jezebel storyline to come to an end and got real juvenile with her antics. She took a Sharpie marker to her white t-shirt and wrote, "Aloe Vera," using a misspelled version of the skincare plant aloe vera. But if she was looking for support from the public, she failed with this inconsiderate and childish behavior. To coerce Vera into releasing Danny from his marriage, she would stop at nothing. But eventually, the movie star got what she wanted. On May 16th, 2002, Vera signed the divorce papers, and Julia and Danny had a celebratory bash, which they invited his family to attend, but they declined. And Julia and Danny wasted no time planning the wedding. She invited family and friends, minus her brother Eric, to an Independence Day celebration on July 3rd. The theme was Midsummer's Night, Dreamish meets Great Gatsby, like, combined with Wild West Bohemian. The unexpected guests witnessed Julia and her boo exchange vows, but a very bitter Vera continued to bashed Julia to the press, calling her a husband stealer, and declared their marriage wouldn't last a year. When Julia did an interview with Diane Sawyer, she described his divorce from Vera and plans to start a family with Danny like it was a Hollywood contract negotiation. She really is made for Hollywood. And we all know, well, not necessarily the ending, but we know so far what has happened with that marriage. So Julia Roberts and her husband, Danny Moder, celebrated their 20th anniversary recently. And the couple have 3 children together. So she proved Vera wrong, at least. Anyway, thank you for watching and listening. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe if you choose. You can find a link in the description for the books covered in this episode. Julia, Her Life by James Spada, and Julia Roberts, America's Sweetheart by Mark Bigo and Nicholas Meyer. I'll put links in the description if I can find them. Regardless of how you feel about Julia Roberts' love life, one area I would encourage her to scale back on would be giving interviews. Her views on drug addicts and postal workers and unmarried parents. Well, I do remember when she was talking about running into one of her high school classmates, and she was making fun of them because she turned out to be a Hollywood movie star and they became a postal worker. And I don't care how big you get or how much money you have or whatever. If you live in the United States, the USPS is delivering your mail. So, yeah, that wasn't a good look. Then there was the time when she went on David Letterman. I believe this was right after she got married, and she berated him for not marrying his girlfriend, his then girlfriend. He has since married her, but yeah, that was another look. I mean, she just went on and on and on about it. And even she said in the interview that she became one of those people. But anyway, I'm going to get out of here. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.